Good evening, I'm Sylvain Cordier, Paul Mellon Curator and Head of the Department of European Art at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. I'm happy to participate to this program with the Richmond Symphony celebrating the 250th anniversary of Beethoven by talking about the relation between art and music in the age of our dear composer. The painting I would like to tell you about tonight is by an exquisite 18th century French artist named Joseph Vernet. It is conserved, of course, in our collection at VMFA, entitled Moonlight Scene, and it dates from 1760. Joseph Vernet is arguably one of the most prolific and successful landscape painters of 18th century Europe. He's an artist who managed to redefine the very genre of landscape paintings and the way we look at the role of nature and the role of landscapes in painting. In order to do so, Vernet worked and fashioned a very distinguished manner to represent nature, a manner that would put nature itself as a powerful and effective conveyor of the sense of drama that had been reserved to history painting at the time. Mythological scenes representing the deeds of Greek and Roman heroes and gods, religious scenes, military battle scenes, or other political representations, etc. Vernet came from this tradition that promoted the idea of history painting as a supreme form of art, with landscapes only serving as a background, as a mere stage for these historical narratives. Whereas landscape painting, like paintings only focusing on representing landscapes and natures, were received as a very non-noble genre of art. And he himself came from a family tradition of simple painters coming from the south of France that were used to paint simple landscapes and especially seascapes for pure decorative purposes. Vernet trained in Italy, and there he kind of thought about a right way to combine these different conventions, history painting, simple landscape painting, and he came up with quite a great idea that led to quite an impactful visual and artistic revolution. What is fascinating with Vernet's pictures is to acknowledge, to notice his ability to make the landscape itself the center of attention and the object of emotional reactions on the viewer's part. To do so, he puts a particular emphasis on representing the turmoils of nature, talking about stormy seascapes, about fires, about volcanic explosions, etc. And he integrates them into spectacular compositions. So in front of a Vernet painting, we're not anymore touched, afraid, or moved by the representations of the life and death of celebrated heroes of the Western culture, or by what happens to religious figures of the Christian tradition. No, we're moved by the drama of animated areas of waters under storm. We're moved by the vivacity of a fire. We're moved by the perspective of tragic events threatening a ship or a boat filled with completely anonymous figures of terrified or of courageous sailors fighting for their survival in a storm. In fact, we are sort of watching a thriller. We're watching a dramatic story of which we don't already know the end, even if the end seems like a very tragic one. In the 18th century, that was a considerable transformation to really take part from the convention of history painting. Grieving no longer with Hercules or Alexander the Great, but grieving with a represented crowd of completely anonymous, simple people fighting for their safety was unquestionably new and revolutionary. Especially because this evolution of the conception of heroic drama was extremely impactful on critics and theoreticians of the time, who realized that there was as much, if not more, emotional and aesthetic pleasure to get in front of these anonymous dramatic scenes than in a lot of historical narratives that were traditionally regarded as superior in the conventional hierarchy of genres in art. With this particular case of our painting, we see a scene of shipwreck that is in fact conceived almost like a battle scene that involves huge structures that appear as sort of fantastical giants. I'm talking about the lighthouse, for instance, and especially the unbalanced ship in the back, which is happening under the eyes of tiny human beings just fighting for their survival. The lighting effect, of course, is mastered by the artist with an excellent sense of chiaroscuro that highlights the drama that is unfolding before us. Situating the scene in strong darkness also plays a part in the emotions that we get as viewers, because it prevents from getting a complete sense of what's going on at first glance. And we need time to figure what is represented beside the torchlight of the lighthouse and the cold light of the moon, like how many ships are there, how many people, how big are the waves, who is in the most danger in the scene, etc., etc. This progression in the deciphering of all that what is going on is crucial to the general experience of the picture and its drama. The reason why I selected this painting to relate it to Beethoven, although it is quite earlier than Beethoven's career, as I was saying, it dates from 1760, so from like a decade before Beethoven was born, actually. It is because we see here, but in the domain of painting, the rise of pure anonymous emotion as a legitimate sense of intellectual pleasure, of artistic pleasure, covering a variety of ranges, from enjoyment to sadness, or from fright to relief, that would lead to many principles of romanticism in the following century, but that also echoes the diversity of feelings that classical music was aiming at in the second half of the 18th century with Haydn, with Mozart, and eventually with Beethoven, especially through the principles of the symphony with its different movements and the progression that symphony proposes through the emotional perception of music. Next time you visit VMFA, please take a look at this Vernet painting. It is located in the Grand Hall in the European department, and I strongly advise bringing your headphones and listening to the Seventh Symphony, and especially the famous Allegretto of the Seventh Symphony, while looking at this picture, and you'll certainly see what I mean. Thank you very much.